Oh, we're not ready. We are live. I'm getting you on screen. People can hear you. Go ahead.
Simon, since you're the only one on the screen, now Neil, how you guys doing? What's going on? Neil, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. Keeping trucking. Bit tired, as I mentioned, but I'm doing all right. How are you guys?
Yeah, the fire brigade is on your ass today, huh,
Neil?
Yeah.
Am I back?
That's cool. Simon, how are you, man? What's a big win for you?
Excited to talk books because you have such an amazing book process going on. I want to write the second book, so I'm excited to be here, learn a lot.
Yeah, that's it. So if you just heard Simon, we are covering book writing, right? As a founder, should we have a book? Should we not have a book? Why should we have a book? How do you write a book? What are all the things important about books? So we got a couple of questions we'll ask the expert judges here, and then we'll share a few secrets. So let's get into it. We'll start right off the bat. Actually, Neil, before we go, what's your win before we get started here?
What's my win? I've just been given a brand ambassador award by Obsbot, so I'm going to be sponsored by them for a year, which is basically a camera company. So that's cool. I've been working with them in a brand relationship, which is cool. So that happened last week, and then just been signing some documents today. So that's cool.
I think brand ambassadorship might be another great topic for a little bit of a later date, because that's always been an interesting topic to me. So then, Neil, you can leave that one because you have those deals, which is awesome. So we'll have to think about. Maybe we'll do that next week. If you want to hear about brand ambassadorship, drop a comment below in the comments section. Make sure do all the things, right? So smash the like button, share this out to the people that need to listen to this to get better with their business. And of course, it's always a conversation, not a one-way street. So we want to hear what you have to say. Drop comments. That's what we're here for. All right, let's get started. Here are 5 questions I'm going to ask these guys based on all the feedback I've gotten from the thousands of people I work with about book writing. So, Simon, I'll come to you because you have a book. Well, first of all, Simon, you have a book that's published in how many languages?
So it started in English, then it came out in Chinese, and it's coming out in Russian right now, 3 languages.
Okay, so you've gone beyond just like a self-publishing. You've worked with a publisher before, so you've kind of gone through the whole process. Would that be a fair statement?
I know the publisher route, yes.
Okay, perfect. So, and then Neil, have you or are you thinking about writing a book?
It's on my sort of potential to-do list, but I'd be interested to know sort of some of the pitfalls and things and considerations. So I may have some questions for you, but I am definitely considering it. But I haven't stepped into the fray yet. I haven't written anything at the moment.
Okay, and then I'm deep in the weeds writing a whole bunch of books at the same time. So that's going to be a very good kind of mix for everybody listening today. Is like we got the guy who's got like stuff published in a bunch of languages. We got the new guy who's thinking about writing a book, and then we got me who's actually writing a bunch of books. So this will be a good mix of conversation today. So question number 1. I'm going to come to Simon. Simon, the question is, where should a new founder start if they have an idea about writing a book, but they have no experience?
Well, the first question is, does the world really need another book? There are some already. So what I think there are 2 categories of books. One is an idea book and one is a handbook. And so most people listening right now probably are expert in something, and so they could write a handbook. So if you have been advising for 10 years people, now you should write a handbook because you have lived experience and you have processes inside of your head that are very alive and very relevant. And if you think, no, I don't have a process in my head, you probably have. You can have somebody interview you. And if they would ask you, hey, what do you do in week 0 with a client, week 1, week 2, you probably can answer something. That is your process. And there is somebody out there that needs this knowledge badly because they are in that situation. And you can make their life better by giving them a little cookbook for their situation, like a handbook on what to do in that situation. So if you are an expert, if you are immersed in the world of someone, of a group of people, and over many years and decades, yes, you please write a handbook, a practical book. Or if you are very, very good at writing, you can write an idea book. An idea book is a book that actually should be a short PDF, but because people are so good at writing, we read the whole thing.
Mhm.
But 0.1% of the world population are Steven Spielbergs and kind of people that can write an idea book. So I think most people listening are more entrepreneurs. They could write a handbook about the field they're immersed in.
I love that. I think that's I mean, great point, right? So like, you don't have to start with a full-fledged like 8 sequence trilogy or something like that. A handbook's awesome, and the best way to do it, right? Like, if you're doing webinars or you're doing speeches or you're doing any of those things, as an example, I run a webinar twice a month live, right? And in that webinar, I drop some crazy valuable stuff. And here's what I did. I found a guy that takes webinars and keynote speeches. And if you want to connect with him, I can absolutely connect. He's one of the best I've ever seen. He said, send me the transcription of my webinar. So I sent it to him. And he used AI, and he took my transcription and he turned it into what Simon just said as a handbook. And then he gifted it back to me saying, here, use it for whatever you want to use it for. And so now I can actually take that transcription and revise it, review it, edit it, go publish it on Amazon. And guess what? Now I have a book done. That could take less than a weekend for anybody that's trying to get into the game. So just something to think about from that perspective, which I think is really good. So Neil, over to you. Where do you think, because you're kind of in the newer phase of writing books, where do you think a founder should even start if they have an idea but no writing experience?
I just like the idea of what Simon said about a handbook, something that I would probably start to think about, because I've had a lot of experience with videography, looking better on camera, and helping people over the years. And I think all that knowledge either could be written down very easily based on what you've just mentioned as well. I have lots of videos. You could transcribe that, lots of sort of speeches and different things that I've done, blog posts and stuff like that. So you could really, a lot of the information that you've already got for a book is probably out there. You just need to sort of collate it, get it all together and put it into a format that would be sort of easily digestible. And I think with tools that are available today, you could easily do that. If you'd asked me this 10 years ago, I would struggle, because I would have said, well, one, I don't have a ton of the experience, but I'm not sure if the tools are out there to help me, whether you would go down the route, and probably talk about this later, about getting sort of an editor and a publisher and somebody to help you who's got experience with writing a book. I think the barrier to entry now for creating something that's tangible and valuable to people is really easy, specifically with using AI or other tools that can help you bring all that information together and create something. So I think for me, a handbook would be something that I could easily start with, and I'd encourage people to really just think about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, get it documented, and maybe create something out of it.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's awesome. Like, what a cool thing. I don't know if we can share screen, Simon, but I just wanted, I could like, if I share, can everyone see my screen? Hold on one second.
No, you can't. But tell us.
I can't. Oh, okay, cool. Because I was going to just share my screen and share kind of like what my handbook looks like, because I actually had one written, but I can't share screen in this particular environment. So that's okay. It's really awesome. It just came back as what we call a pocket guide, right? So it's like, take your webinar and turn it into one of those pocket guides, and then you can actually list it and sell it online and make it a bestseller. I think that's kind of a cool idea. So, okay, let's move on. I guess the other thing that I would add to this is like, where does somebody start, right? So where do you start? What Simon said, if you're solving real world problems for people in the world with your business, then it might make sense for you to have a book. If you are doing keynote speeches, meaning you're getting invited to speak on stage, and you don't have a book that you can place on every seat in that arena so that people can get your book, remember you, and then follow up with you later, you're missing the boat. So it could be as easy as there's a story. I have a friend of mine, Dan Henry, if you know who he is. He calls himself the digital millionaire. He wrote a book called The Digital Millionaire Secrets. He worked through Russell Brunson's Inner Circle. And he got invited because he ran a webinar and was very successful, did millions of dollars. Russell invited him to speak on the Funnel Hacking Live stage. And so he's like, oh, shoot, I don't have a book. So what he did is he created this 40-page fold out book. He made like, at the time, it was like 1,000 copies that he had to pay for. So he spent like $2,000 or $3,000 to make 1,000 copies of this little 40-page paperback, like little stapled together book. And he put it on all the seats at Funnel Hacking Live. So he went up on and did his speech. He talked about the stuff in the book. And then guess what happened? Over the next year, it generated more than $2 million. So if you are speaking on stage and you have a place, a captive audience, and you're not leaving them with your goods, this is the best reason for you to go out and write a handbook or just rip out like a pocket guide or something that you can use and give out to people all the time. So that's one of the biggest use cases. And I think a lot of reasons why founders don't write books is because they don't have a marketing plan in mind. They don't have how I'm going to take this to market, what I'm going to do with it. So before you even do write a book, like always think about like, how are you going to take it to the marketplace? Because that's going to be very, very important. And a lot of people write a book and then don't sell any copies. And that's never a good thing, right? So, all right, Simon, back to you. What's the difference between self-publishing, a hybrid of self-publishing, and then traditional publishing? And which one would make the most sense for a founder just getting started?
The differences are smaller than you think. Promotion will always be on you. The cover, if you really are want the cover the way you want it, that's easier to do on your own, much easier. Even the title, you cannot select the title if you go with a publisher. They decide the title. So promotion, it's on you anyways. Selling the rights to platforms, this will only work with a publisher. What is a platform? There are these summary platforms, right? There are many of them, and you can sell the rights. That's licensing deals. If you have a publisher, they do licensing deals for you, and they sell those to summarizing platforms. So I'm getting royalties just from that, and I was involved 0 second in that process. This happens only if you have a publisher. The next thing is additional languages. If you want somebody to go out there to other countries and say, hey, China, do you want this book? The publisher will do it. You will not do it. I don't even know how to do it. I would never even think about it, right? And so that's the main difference. Promotion is always on you. Yeah, I don't think it's a huge difference. You can be quicker if you go out there yourself, but you said doing it in a weekend, I still think you have to work a year on a book. It's 6 months writing and it's 6 months promoting, and it won't get faster with AI because you still need to make it a really good book. And we can unpack later what that means. There is a specific arc in each chapter that you have to build, and it's like Netflix episodes. And there is an arc inside the chapter that you have to get right, and there is an arc between those chapters that you have to get right. And that's the most work. Writing is one part, but then it's editing, and that's the biggest part.
To create those arcs, or to create the arcs, are you using a lot of storytelling? Is that really how you're creating the arcs?
I can unpack those. So the first arc is you start from the end in mind when you write a book. If it's a practical book, this book will help HVAC business owners save 20 hours per week. So if that's the overall purpose of the book, now each chapter will solve one part of that problem and deliver part of that promise. Now you go into the chapter. You know that the chapter must end delivering that part promise. Now you have to start it with a story arc, which is this person had this problem. He was in HVAC. He had this problem. He tried this. Oh my God, it's not working. Will he? And then he meets somebody that can help him. Will this work? We don't know. Oh my God, let's find out. And then, they try a few things and in the end it works. Oh my God, it did work. Now the end of the chapter is this framework, this process that he used, you have access to it. Go and download it at .com. So that's the end. If it's a commercial book, right? If it's not your hobby. We're talking here a book that makes you money. So if you're looking for royalties and lead generation from the book, attracting the right people to your business as a client, now it needs to end with they having access to what you discussed in that chapter, and they can download it and you get their email address, and now you have them in a drip campaign. And this is the reason why you write the book in the first place. Yes, it's nice to be on podcasts and on stages, but this is the money maker. When you look at your Slack channel and it goes, ding, this person downloaded the tool, ding, this person downloaded the tool, that's the funnel builder. And so each chapter needs to end like that, but that's just the chapter itself. Now they would stop reading. So you have to go another round with editing and say, what's the reason for them to read the next chapter? Because you don't have to finish a book. You only do it if it feels like a Netflix series where you go, oh my God, I have to know what's next. So you have to create that cliffhanger. And if you're not a professional writer, it's not that easy. That will take you days to just think about the cliffhanger of one chapter. And then you build that bridge, and that's the next chapter. And then you have two big billboards, one before chapter 1 and one after chapter 12 or 13 or whatever your chapters are. That's the overall process. We can go even deeper, but that's the overview.
Neil, would you have any takeaways from that or feedback or stuff you'd add to that one?
Well, I mean, it's very eye-opening because obviously a lot of people do self-publishing these days, right? They'll go on and set up something on KDP, which is the Kindle self-publishing thing. They'll do that. But I think what you're saying, Simon, is that no matter what you're writing, you have to clearly make it interesting to keep people going through the book. I've read many different technical books in my life, being an IT consultant prior to doing videography, and they were the most dry, difficult, arduous books to read because, they're talking about protocols and internet and all kinds of interesting stuff, right? And there's no real fluff, fine, funny way to sort of make that, interesting. So I think what you're saying is the reliance on having a publisher and a decent editor is really the team that you need in order to craft this book into something much more memorable than just laying out your stories, your way of presenting, because that's probably not going to resonate and not have that sort of story arc that you mentioned, because every chapter you've got to keep people interested, and it's not just telling people, well, this is how you do this and move on to the next chapter and so on, which is really interesting. So for me, I was considering trying to write this myself. I'm not a writer by any stretch. I have written, a few things here and there and papers and stuff, but I don't know whether I have the technical knowledge and the skill to craft something within that realm of story arc and making it interesting with that cliffhanger at the end and then building up to having an end goal in mind. I mean, that is clear, storytelling 101, have an end goal in mind and then work backwards. And you can apply that to video and everything else. But I think for me now, that takeaway is, might need to consider getting the experts in to do that. Because even though AI is out there and can recite all the crafts and all the works of everybody in the world, it's not necessarily going to make you a better writer. And it would take you a long time. So that's really interesting. So thanks for those insights, Simon.
The thing that I'd add to what's the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing is there's a big cost associated with either way that you go as well. So like most people are, if you're on a shoestring budget, self-publishing or hybrid kind of usually makes a little bit more sense. If you have some coins and your business is pumping, then hiring, there's lots of companies. In fact, there's companies that work with us. One of them, Game Changer Publishing, a girl named Chris Callie, did $10 million last year in her publishing business using our software, which is amazing. And she just helps people to publish books. So you'd go to her and you say, okay, here's, $20,000 to $50,000. And then they interview you on Zoom for like 2 to 3, maybe 5 hours max. And then they'll take that 5 hours or 3 hours of recording and they will build your whole book all for you, right? So it's like, it's kind of either that whole concept of buying your way in or building your way in. So if you're going to have a publishing company that does the publishing for you, it's going to be a little more expensive. If you're doing it yourself, then you got to be really careful about your writing abilities and kind of the stuff that Simon said. If you're not creating arcs, your book's not going to get any traction. And then as we go into like publishing, there's a couple of things, but actually before publishing, I would say is like editing, because editing is a big part of books as well. Kind of Simon mentioned it. The one thing that I would share is like, I created the first draft of my book. And then after I feel good about it, right, it would be like, write it over what Simon said, 6 months, revise, then give it to what we call a developmental editor. So there's two types of editors. I learned this in the process. The first type of editor is the one that looks overall at the structure of where the parts of the pieces of the book should be. And so they'll read for context and they'll say, oh, your chapter 1 should be chapter 8. Your chapter 2 should be the introduction or whatever, right? So they'll move the pieces around for you. And then you take it back from the developmental editor and you go through and you change all of that stuff. And then you submit it to the second editor, who's what we call a line editor. Line editor is the grammar freak, the person that makes sure the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and the periods are after each sentence, and all the italics and bold and everything else, and makes it look good. And then from there, it goes into artwork and creating like a cover and back cover, getting testimonials put in the right place, and then the rest of it. So that's kind of the process. And then after you get from the line editor back, now you would go to the publishing source, and then if you're self-publishing, that's kind of the process that we run through. Next question here is, Simon, maybe you could touch on this again. So how long should it realistically take to write and publish a solid book without killing business momentum? And how do you fit it into your day?
Calculate a book is a year of work. 6 months writing, 6 months promoting. The 6 months writing are an incubation stage where you commit to doing it, but then you're still in incubation, right? And before you write the book, so the beginner mistake is they start writing the book. Instead of that, you write the book proposal. The proposal is kind of like a business plan for a company before you start the company. So who is it for? What is it for? You do a little competitive analysis. Which books are there already? How does your build on them? What's your marketing strategy? Which marketing channels will you use? Do you have an email list? What's the size? Who does it reach? That's the so-called book proposal. And that's what you do in the first weeks. You don't start writing any book before you don't have a proposal. My reason why I approached a publisher in the first place was I wanted to test the idea. I wanted to test the market. Before I write a book, I want to know that anybody needs it, right? And how do you test it? So my hypothesis was, if I ask 10 publishing houses and 1 or 2 of them want to do it, afterwards, I decide if I want to do it with them. But in the first place, I'm getting the validation that the market needs it because they know the market. I don't. But they know what sells and what the market needs right now. And so because one of them said yes and even validated the title and said the title is iconic, we keep the title, I said, oh my God, this is a home run because it's the name of my product and of my company. If the book can have the same, yes, that's so in line for me. And they went, yeah, okay. It works. It works. It's iconic. And I say, okay, boom, double check. You are my team. Let's go with you. And it was validated. 1 year, 6 months. First week, book proposal. Second, third week, the structure of the whole thing. From the end back, think of it's a Netflix series. What's the cover, right? And you start with literally with the cover and the format, and then each chapter is an episode. That will be the next 3 months, and then it's another 3 months of refining, rewriting. Now it's the 6th month. The book is done. You publish it, or you have somebody publish it. And now it's 6 months heavy promotion. And there is only one way to promote a book, which is being on podcasts. You have to be on 3 to 5 podcasts every day for 6 months. That's your book tour. because that's the most available and most direct thing. Of course, you can do it physically, but then you are literally doing nothing else for the next 6 months. That's not smart for a business owner to do. But if you want to have a tour like the Rolling Stones and still be running your business and running your life, I think podcasts is the perfect sweet spot, because it's the new radio, so it's the new stages, but you can do it part-time.
Could I ask you just a quick question, Simon, on what you've just mentioned about the whole market research thing? Because that's really interesting for me, because obviously lots of people have ideas around what their book should be about. But obviously if there's no market for it, then there's no point in doing it. So how did you find out which publishers to target and ask the questions to around your book? Is there a directory? How do somebody like me who would want to start writing a book find these people out? Do you do sort of cold directory calls to them, or head up on email or something? Or is there a list of like lots of publishers that will take your calls for free? Or do you have to pay them to do the market research? I'm just interested, because obviously you can go and look online and sort of do some research yourself. But obviously if these guys are the experts, they know what's selling and what's not, and where the demand maybe is for a particular topic, then how does one start?
You can do that online, but the cold route is really hard because everybody's trying it. What I did was an organic route. I run a podcast, and so I had like 5 guests per week. And usually the guests, after the episode, we hang out a little bit and we just chat. And this was when they usually ask me questions, and then I was asking them questions. Most of them came onto my podcast promoting their book. So we were talking about the book. And so in the chat later on, after the interview, I was like, hey, and how is it with your publisher? And they would tell me. And so I had like 30, 35 who were happy with their publisher. And I sent him an email a few weeks later and said, hey, would you introduce me to your publisher? And one of them, he was really, really happy with his little, he called them his little publisher, because Kogan Page is small and is in London. It's not Penguin Random House, right? It's somewhere in the small space. But he liked the way the editing was done, and he liked that they were picky. And I liked the idea that they are picky too, because I was doing market research. And so because they were picky, because it felt small enough that, I can have access to them, and I don't have to compete with Malcolm Gladwell for their attention, but it's just, smaller authors like me. So that was my reason. And my process was asking 50 people who were promoting a book, and the 35 that were happiest, I followed up with.
I love that. That's so good. Neil, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Sweet. Okay. I'll come over to you, Neil. In your mind, because you haven't quite written one yet, or you think about writing one, do you think a book can be profitable without being a bestseller?
If it reaches the right people, yeah. I mean, it's like anything else, right? You don't have to have this worldwide success for a particular aspect of your life to be profitable. I think if it touches certain people, if it resonates with them, and if it solves, ideally, some of their problems, and you can sell enough of them, then yeah, I guess you can make a tidy profit. And I think that just depends, though, back to what you mentioned before around self-publishing versus getting a publisher involved. So obviously, if you've got upfront costs with publishers, editors, distribution, promotion, and things like that, and it doesn't sell very well, then maybe that would then potentially be a loss for you, or you're not going to get as much profit from that. But if you do self-publish and just give it a go, and put your sort of heart and soul into it, and then just publish yourself, then maybe the return on that investment that you put in is going to lend more sort of sales for you. So I guess it just depends on, if you've got a decent topic like Simon obviously had and went to the right publishers, then obviously, it's lend really good for him. But I think for people who's just starting out, then maybe you should consider self-publishing to start with. But I do think that if your book sells enough without it being a bestseller, it can definitely lend a profit. And I'd be interested to see what what happens. And just as a question on that, I mean, you don't have to tell me your sort of figures, but is there a sort of an average cost of publishing a book if you go with a distribution company, an editor, and so on? I don't know whether any of the founders here would sort of find that interesting who's watching.
It doesn't cost anything. Some people pay for it, but it doesn't cost anything. The cost, the main cost usually is the editing, and the editing can now be done by Claude. But usually, historically, you would have an editor or even two editors, like Sean explained, right? And this editing team, that was around $10,000, roughly. But now, probably 90% of that can be done by Claude. So I don't think you need to spend on editing right now. And there is zero costs in publishing. Nobody publishes anything. It gets printed on demand by Amazon anyways. And if you have a publisher, they will bring it to the Barnes and Nobles and to the airports. But the airports are not the place where most books are sold anyways. So there are actually no costs if you don't want any. I would personally invest into a graphic designer because the cover is important and nobody has a proper one. So find yours. That for me was the biggest. I would invest into that, finding your own graphic designer, because book sells by the cover, and it stays forever as a visual representation of your brand.
Cool.
Let's talk into monetizing smartly. Simon, I'll start with you because I mean, obviously you've been in the game doing the thing. I mean, I'm just about to bring a number of books into the world here in the next coming months, which I'm excited about. So I have a couple of ideas on monetization strategies. So why don't you share, like, when you first started, what was your thought on how you're going to monetize, and how did you want to do it smartly?
I had no idea, obviously, because it was my first book. And I was asking the publisher because they were the only one who had a clue. And they were absolutely lovely. They helped me a lot. They said, Simon, if you want this to bring you clients, you have to rework each chapter in this way. And they told me exactly what I told you. The beginning, one of your clients with a problem. Then you show up as the person who can solve it. Because I wasn't showing up at all. I was just telling the solution. And they said, no, Simon, after this chapter, nobody's thinking of calling you and booking you. I said, oh, you are right. And so we rewrote it. Okay, so there is Ali. Ali has a problem. And then he calls his coach. His coach comes up. Oh, the coach. And then so we rewrote that chapter, because the way you make money is never royalties. Forget that. Only Malcolm Gladwell makes proper royalties. A normal author makes 0 royalties. And if you're an okay author, it's May 20 today. I made $360 from all these languages right now. It's nothing, right? It's not worth a year of working. So don't think about it. Don't think about the royalties in the first place. The money maker is deal flow. So deal flow, in my case, I thought, okay, I have this cool tools page on my page, and people love downloading the tools, strategysprints.com/tools. I said, let's use that. Each chapter points to that. So I rewrote each chapter to be around one specific tool that I use. And so in that chapter, we solved the problem of the client using this tool. Hey, go download that tool. That was the plan. And that actually worked out, because now 2.5 years later, it's still making ding, 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 ding in the Slack group. And then we look at those people, and if they're cool, we call them. So it's an actual deal flow generator. And my plan B was, if this isn't a deal flow generator, at least it should be a credibility strengthener, right? Hey, I know about this topic. That kind of worked, because the first year we got booked on all podcasts where we wanted to get booked on, because if you have a fresh book, that usually helps you get on podcasts. It changed a little bit. Now, 3 years later, there are many more podcasts and there are many more authors. So it's not that special anymore, being an author, but 3 years ago it was something, and you would get booked.
Yeah, I like that. I kind of think about like the way that I came, obviously being in the process and about to use books to monetize. The first thing that we started with as we were looking at this as a company was, why does somebody buy a book? Right. And in my opinion, there's kind of like 4 reasons why someone's going to buy a book. The first reason someone will buy a book, if they're, it's again, it depends on the type of book that you're into. But the first reason someone would ever buy a book is to solve a problem that they have now in their life, some way or another. So you could write a book based on solving a problem. That's one thing to do. Secondly, if there's people out there that are looking at a new industry and they want to make money in a place, that's another reason why or how you could write or frame a book to help somebody. Hey, like you're new into this fix and flip thing in the real estate game, read this book, it'll get you up and going, right? That's a way that you can use to make money, not so much to solve a problem. The third reason was developing mastery over a topic, right? So like Simon's book, one of the things I love about the Strategy Sprints book is it's not, he could have made a book out of each chapter in his book. Okay. Like that's how like dense the material is what I'd say. And so like if you're trying to give somebody true mastery over a topic, the book has to be a little bit more dense. It's one of those ones that kind of hurts your brain to try to read through the whole thing, because then like, hey, this can be kind of like my Bible when I'm trying to learn, the strategy sprints method and going through that process as an example. So mastery is the third reason, and the fourth reason is just for people like that read for recreation or hobby or fun or something like that. So the first thing we did was like, okay, which one are we doing here? And so as I was thinking about these problems, I thought like, why can I want to do mastery, but I can't put everything I know into one book because it's just, I know it's too much. And so we broke it out by topic. So I'm one of the guys in the DM space, personal DMs. And so I thought, okay, let's write a book on mastery about DMs, right? Because everybody DMs incorrectly. Over the last 30 years, I've done majority of my revenue has been through DM type messaging and conversation. And so I've looked at the data and I have all the knowledge, and I've helped now more than 8,000 people personally. And my software company, this one's helped over 4,000 additional people. So like I have the background now to actually put something together, mastery, but that's just for DMs, because I also, like Simon, I teach sales. And so that's another topic. And then we also have like our software that does something even a little bit different. So for me, it was like, look, I want to build a mastery, and it became, hey, let's write a series. So we're in development of a trilogy series. We're going to launch one book at a time. We're going to run it, like Simon said, right? 6 months to write, 6 months to promote, and then launch it and let it ride for like another year, and then launch the next one, and then do the next one. So we have a roadmap of our books, and that's kind of how we're doing it. But like, I think the big takeaway is like, why are you writing the book? What's the reason? And then we start from there on what are we going to do to monetize? Because if we're thinking about monetizing, low ticket funnels, hey, free plus shipping, get this book, free plus shipping. And then you can run paid ads at the funnel. They get the book free plus shipping. And the reason for that book is for them to go back and consume some of your stuff, but then go back, book a call, and buy something more from you, right? So that's like a funnel. And then you have low ticket funnels. Like we just built a DM playbook, which is when the other ones are writing, which is like, hey, get the playbook for $47. It's kind of like that get started, make money kind of a thing. And then from there, it's like, oh, hey, do you want the templates? Upsell. Oh, hey, do you want the training videos? Upsell. Oh, do you want a strategy call with my team? Upsell. Oh, hey, do you want a membership to my software? Another upsell. So like we're building Ascension funnels from low ticket to high ticket. And so before you guys write a book, if you're listening to me, hear this very clearly, make sure you think through how you're going to monetize that book on the back end before you start writing. Otherwise, you'll get into it and you'll just get consumed by it. And then you'll get exhausted by the time you're ending the book. Because I think, and Simon, you can probably tell me this for sure, but like the majority of the work doesn't start until the book is actually done and published, right? If you want to monetize. Would you say that's a fair statement, Simon?
Yeah, it's a year of work of doing exactly this, all the things that you just said, and you do them already while writing. Because remember, you start with the book proposal, so you are thinking about the promotion strategy, the marketing of the book in the very first week. That's the book proposal. And then you write it, and while you're writing, you're thinking about these hooks, these entry points, the upsells. You're thinking about the funnel. And then you go and actually promote it. So now you're on podcast, and the last 5 minutes of the podcast, people ask you, yeah, where to get the book and
Yeah.
why the book and who is it for, and so and you perfect those last 5 minutes to get people to buy it in bulk.
Totally. Love that. Totally true. All right. Last question here for the day. Simon, what mistakes do first-time founders make when trying to turn their expertise into a book?
Well, one mistake is probably what I did, that you try to put everything into one book and then later on, like you said, realize, oh my God, this could have been 5 books. So I think this is a beginner's mistake, which more people like academics do. But if you're an entrepreneur, do it like Sean. Make it a series of things. I was so pissed when Alex Hormozy came out with his series. And I was like, oh my God, he split it up into 3. He's a genius marketer. He's a genius marketer.
Yep.
He won 1-0. Alex, congrats, kudos. He did it the right way. And now I have a book in my hand that could be 5, but it's just 1. Okay, fair enough. This is a beginner's mistake. Second book that I'm starting right now will be very, very different. The other beginner's mistake is not to start at all, because most people, they don't even write a book. So that's beginner mistake, probably from volume number 1. Just do it. Do your book and don't overthink it. Use a structure. The structure is book proposal, then writing, then promoting. It's a year of a project. You just heard all the milestones. Just put them into your project management tool of your choice. And that's it. It's a project of a year. Do it. Do it. Your family will love you anyways. If they have something tangible there, they will be proud of you.
Yeah, 100%. I'm my sister, I told her I was in the process of writing books and she freaked out. She's like, "What? You're like going to be an author?" I was like, "Yeah." So she was, but I think it's a cool byproduct of the whole thing as well. So Simon, I love that. I would also say like the big mistake, people are like, "Oh, I have this ambition to write a book. It's going to take a year. I got it." Okay. They put it on their thing and then they don't time block when they can write it. So remember, as a founder, one of the things that we always need to do is live and die by time blocking on a calendar. I used to think time blocking would steal my time and I would hate it because I'd be tied to this calendar. But then my coach, Alex Sharfin at the time, he said, look, like you need to calendar your life because it's actually going to create freedom. And I was like, whoa, I didn't even think like they could even do that for me. And I started time blocking everything. And like when I started writing my book, is like I actually bucket a minimum of 30 minutes a day when I write stuff just for that book. It's either I'm thinking about the book, the promotion strategy, or I'm actually writing words, putting together formatting or whatever. And I do it just 30 minutes a day because guess what? When you get into it, you know, that 30 minutes comes and goes really, really quickly. And by the end of it, you're like, damn, like I just want to keep going on this now, which is great. But it's like, if you don't take action, like Simon said, right? Lethargy will kill your book. Like laziness, don't be lazy. Time block that stuff. Neil, what would you say, in your opinion, is like looking at a first-time book writer founder? What do you think some of the mistakes they might stumble into would be?
I think the imposter syndrome thing that we've mentioned before around, do I have anything to say that people would actually go and buy in terms of a book format? I think that's one of the barriers that a lot of people have when it comes to writing a book. I think a certain time of life when you've had a lot of experience and things, and you have, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, you've amassed all this information, all this experience over the years. And I think not starting and actually thinking that, well, nobody's going to read or even be interested in my book is a big barrier. And I think a lot of people do that, myself included. So I think that was one of the things that we mistake, as Simon mentioned, we just don't start at all. And I really like the idea of splitting up those books like you're actually doing at the moment, Sean, because I think that you can get consumed by that. And I think maybe one of the ideas is that and I'd be interested to know how you sort of decided to split up the books into 3. Was it because there was so much information, as you mentioned, and different sort of strategies that you had in your sort of day-to-day? Did it lend itself to thinking, well, if I put all this in one book, it's either going to confuse the audience, or there is a sort of a workflow that you would take on the journey from A to B, or C in your case, through that? And I think for me, probably trying to put too much into one book wouldn't be a good idea. And I think people think also that a book has to be like this huge, large thing. It could be a very small, handy guide. It doesn't have to be War and Peace, for example. And you could definitely then split up the book into multiple sections. But I'd be just interested to know, what was your sort of decision on splitting that book up into sort of the manageable chunks? And not
Yeah,
putting
great
it all
question.
into
I'll
one?
share that I copied my coach, Russell Brunson, right? So I've been mentored by Russell Brunson since 2016. He's a dear friend of mine. I love his family to death. And in my opinion, I think he's the best marketer in the world. Hands down, not a better one that I've ever studied. Just because of like how he goes about learning marketing, and he's a super geek, right? He's now collecting books and talking about his recent one that he was talking about. He got a book for $12,000 called Propaganda. And it was the guy that actually ended the war using PR. And then propaganda became a bad word. So this guy reframed the word propaganda to become PR. And he's like the first person to ever create PR. And Russell was sharing like the frameworks out of that book are frameworks that anyone can use to like persuade people or persuade or influence others. And but when Russell wrote his first set of books, he had the trilogy, right? So he had .com secrets. What does .com secrets teach you? .com secrets teaches you the first part of what you need, how to build a funnel. You're one funnel away. Here's all the components, everything that needs to be in a funnel. Then he came out with the second book, which I think is the best in that trilogy, is called Expert Secrets. This is how you tell your story as a marketer, and then you put all that information back in the funnel from book one. So fundamental principle, if you don't have a funnel, you need to read .com secrets. If you need to know how to tell your story as a marketer, Expert Secrets. And then the last piece is now you have your funnel and your story inside of it. How do you get people or eyeballs to go to that funnel, which became the third one, which is Traffic Secrets. And so for ours, when we built the trilogy series, or when I kind of came up with this idea originally, we have an amazing tool. It's called FlowChat. And so for us, we teach DMs, how to close deals in personal DMs. That's our bread and butter. Now, closing deals in DMs, sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes you need a call. Sometimes you need a funnel. Sometimes you need some support to actually close the deals. So when we looked at this, we're like, look, the first book's going to be on DMs. The second book is now you've created the opportunity from your DM. How do you convert that into a sale for yourself? Right? Because now you have the two pieces of I can create opportunities, I can close deals. But then the last piece is, well, how do you amplify or accelerate everything you're already doing? And so our third book is actually designed around all the different methods that you can grow digitally, whether it be like a webinar or a live event, or you're growing a newsletter, YouTube channel, whatever the method is that you're using to grow your business. Here's the goods, the bads, and the uglies, because I've tried all of them. And then here's how our software accelerates any one of those methods based on the fundamental principles of the first two books. So that's how I came up with the trilogy for us. Yeah.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up question. What's your frequency of publishing then? Are you going to publish them all in a trilogy? Are you going to take 6 months in between each one? What's
great question. So the first one will be launched by the end of the summer. And then we're going to market that one. I'm going to go on a book tour, like Simon said, on podcast tour. And I'm going to promote that book probably for at least 6 months, maybe a year before we launch the second one. In that process, I'll start writing the next one. I have the framework all concepted out. In our third book, we actually wrote it first because that was the only book we were going to publish originally. So Chris and I wrote an 80,000 word manuscript on how to build whatever, accelerate any method online, because we've done that before. And so then we're like, but wait, like if we just give this book out to people, they're not going to have the framework for the DM stuff or the sales. So like this one needs to be the third book in the trilogy. So we've already written 90% of that one. So that one is nice because now it's just like we just got to launch the first one, launch the second one, and the third one's practically done already. So that's kind of the process that I'm going through. So, yeah.
Genius.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm excited about it. All right, well, guys, that's going to end the episode for today. Thank you so much for being here. Again, if you're a founder trying to elevate yourself to the next level, make sure and subscribe to this channel.
I have a proposal for next week because
what is it?
We'll be just the two of us. I have a proposal for next week.
Let's do it.
We could talk about how to turn your expertise into 5 to 7 income streams, because I've found 13 income streams that people can do. Wow. And so maybe we share that one if you find it relevant.
I think that's an amazing turn expertise into 5 to 7 income streams. Yes, I love that title. We'll just have to wordsmith it a little bit, or we'll have Neil wordsmith it a little bit for us for a title. So the next week, we're going to cover how to turn your expertise into 5 to 7 different income streams. Don't forget to smash that like button, share this out to somebody that needs it, and please drop a comment for us because we'd love to hear from you. What should we cover? What should we be doing? With that said, love you guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Avoid trying to do thousands of things that doesn't work. We have 274 templates for your business success. Reach your ambitious goals with one-on-one sprint coach. We double your revenue in 90 days.
What if your business would run well even when you are on vacation? Discover how 1,600 business owners have regained their freedom using the Strategy Sprints blueprints. How they enjoy living their dream and watching their business